Allah suddenly appeared and walked up and kissed the black stone. Then he passed by them while performing the circumambulation. Notice at the time where the Kaaba still has 360 idols. There are still 360 idols surrounding it. Muhammad is running around kissing the black stone during the time where the Kaaba is still in the possession of the pagans. Now, how does this prove that he's not a prophet of the true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Moses? Well, according to the scriptures, God expressly forbids. This is in Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 5. Read it. Exodus 20, verses 1 to 5. God expressly forbids making an image of anything in heaven, on earth, and the seas below, bowing to it. In another reference, we see that bowing to an object and kissing it is worship. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 18 says that God will preserve 7,000 Israelites, has preserved 7,000 Israelites who have not bowed the knee to Baal and kissed him, meaning his image. So kissing an object, an image, is an act of worship. So the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Moses, expressly forbids his followers from making an image and kissing it and bowing to it. And yet here we have Muhammad, who is supposedly the prophet of monotheism, a prophet sent by the same God of Abraham, kissing a black stone at a time in which the Kaaba is still in the hands of the pagans, still surrounded with 360 idols, and yet Muslims want us to believe that he is a true prophet who comes and fulfills and completes the message of the prophets before him, prophets like Moses, and so on and so forth.
And it's interesting. I mean, if you look at like the Old Testament prophets, many of them came during a time when Israel was compromising with paganism, and the purpose of God sending these prophets was to draw them out of that paganism back to the worship of the one true God. How can you say that Muhammad is in this same line? All of these prophets came to keep people away from paganism. Muhammad comes along and says, oh, all these pagan practices, that's okay. I'll just say they're all from Abraham, and that'll make all of these pagan practices okay. I mean, a false prophet of the Old Testament could have done that. If a false prophet came along and said, oh, you're performing all these practices, you're bowing down to Baal, no problem, Abraham did that too. Any false prophet could come along and say all these pagan practices are okay, and that would help him a lot with the pagans. But I mean, think about it. Every single prophet in the line of the prophets of Israel called people away from paganism. Muhammad compromised with almost every aspect of paganism. In fact, I can't think of too many instances, practices or beliefs of the pagans that Muhammad didn't compromise with. You say, well, Muhammad was a diehard monotheist. He even compromised with that, as we'll see on the next program, when we examine the satanic verses. Muhammad compromised with everything, with practically everything the pagans held. And this is a prophet like the Old Testament prophets? Come on, folks.
All right, we have another call from Wissam. Good evening, Wissam. You're on the air. Go ahead. Wissam? Wissam is with us?
Did we lose him?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
How are you?
You're on the air.
Welcome.
Go ahead.
Oh, peace be with you.
Thank you.
I just have a comment regarding all the shows that you been airing like for a long time now.
Okay.
I'm really impressed with what you're doing, like Brother Sam and Brother Dave. This is amazing. Like, I bow to all the effort that you've been doing. But the problem is, like, none of the 1,000.5 billion Muslims know that, what you're talking about. They don't know that, you know. And I just don't know how you can get the message to them. I mean, you're doing a great effort, and I appreciate that. It's just the problem is how to get the picture to these guys. And even sometimes I think that even if they get the picture or they see the picture, it seems like, you know, that Muhammad is their God. It's not Allah is their God. It's whatever Muhammad did, they do with effortless. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. He's their idol. You know, it didn't matter if it's true or not. They just do it. You know, something else I just want to say, about something else. I mean, God bless you, bless your show. It's amazing, it's awesome, like I said. I don't know what it is. You might think about something else, but we have to have something else. We have to have another idea to bring these people to understand, like, where are they going, or why are they thinking this way? Or is it, I have just an example, if you let me speak for a little bit longer. We, like back home, if we tie a donkey with the front hand and his leg, like for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they would and would take it off after 3 weeks. The donkey would still think that he's still tied up, after we take it off, And these people have been tied up for 1,400 years. I don't know, like how, in a 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, how we can make them get this thing off of them. Anyway, just to make a conversation a little bit shorter, and about peace and Islam. Peace and Islam is why is Christianity in the Middle East, in the Holy Land, is less than 1% right now? I need an answer for that. Second, in Jordan, in Syria, in Turkey, in Iraq, in Egypt, everywhere where Christianity was a dominant religion, and now they are less than, I would say, 5% in these countries. Why is that? Is it because Islam was peaceful? And I need an answer on that. And on top of everything, in the Holy Land, like I said, it's less than 1%. There's churches in the Holy Land that it just exist in a town full of Muslims.
Thank you very much, Osam, for your question. Let me take another call. Who is with me? Next call, please.
Okay. My name is Vasily. Can you hear me?
What's your name, please?
Vasily.
Vasily, how are you, Vasily?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Thank you, brothers, for your program. I'm really glad to see you all the time. I am Ukrainian, and I was born in a Christian family, but from the beginning, I was looking for the truth myself. And I read many religions, and one of them was Islam. And I read a few times Quran, and that was really hard for me. I cannot see there any connections, logic, and sense. And I had many Muslim friends, and I asked them for explanation. But none of them can explain me Quran. And until today, when I see your program, I began to understand many things.
Good.
But I have two questions.
Okay.
One about Muhammad. Can you find, did Muhammad had prediction about his life, ministry, mission, everything, like Jesus? Jesus was predicted from the beginning, very beginning. What about Muhammad? Where he was predicted, through him, through whom, and for whom? What nation was waiting for him? And next, my question for the Allah. That I asked many times Muslim. Allah, one person, one God, and He is just and He is merciful. But from my understanding, in one person cannot exist two natures. Justice and forgiveness cannot belong one person. Because just, you judge, you have to say Allah. How one person can say Allah and at the same time bring forgiveness? That's really mess. I cannot understand this. Can you explain for me how forgiveness and justice be in one person? For me, that looks like black and white, and that's really simple for a simple person. That cannot be in one person. Thank you very much. Can you explain for me these two my questions?
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. We'll take these in reverse. We had two calls. Allah is just and merciful. You said that this is a problem. Well, I'd say it is for Islam, but I don't think it's a problem for a being to have an attribute of justice and an attribute of love and mercy, because according to Christianity, God has these attributes. We believe that God is infinitely just and that God is infinitely loving and merciful. And how can these not be in conflict? Well, we're going to look at this a bit tomorrow when we discuss the reason for the incarnation. But a just being, a being that is infinitely just, would have to punish all sin. Now, you're right in saying, well, if a being has to punish sin, how can he also be merciful? Well, that does seem to be a difficulty. If you're saying there's a being who's infinitely just and infinitely loving and merciful, how can he be both? If he forgives all sins, if he forgives people because he loves them, then he's not being just. On the other hand, if he punishes everyone for their sins, well, he's not being loving and merciful. And what we find is that if you claim that a God exists with those attributes, you have to have something like the incarnation and sacrificial death of the incarnate Lord. Why? Because if all sin must be punished, then at the end of time, all sin has to have been punished by God. All this sin must have been punished. But if that being truly loves people, he'll be willing to do anything to forgive them. And what we find in Christianity is that God loved people so much that he willingly took the penalty upon himself. So what we have is that all sin, in Christianity, at the end of time, every sin will be punished. If a person rejects God's love and forgiveness, then that person has to take the punishment himself. But for all of those who turn to God in repentance, God accepts that punishment on the Lord Jesus Christ. So all sin is punished, and yet God shows his infinite love and mercy by what he did for us. Now we turn to Islam. Muslims also say that Allah is just and merciful, but in Islam there's a conflict between them, and what we find is that there's a struggle between Allah's justice and his mercy, and if you're a good Muslim, his mercy sort of trumps his justice, and so one of his attributes gets beaten by the other, and then he can accept you into paradise. But what we also find in Islam is that Muslims reduce and diminish and insult God by saying that he's not infinite in his attributes. So think about Allah. According to Islam, at the end of time, has all sin been punished? No, Allah can just sweep your sin under the rug if he really likes you. So God is not all just because he does not punish all sin, but at the same time, Allah is not all loving and merciful either. Over and over again in the Quran, we find Allah does not love the unbelievers. Allah does not love those who exceed the limits. Allah does not love the proud. Allah doesn't love all kinds of people. In fact, according to the Quran, Allah only loves good Muslims. Those are the only people that Allah loves. So what we find in Christianity is that God, because he is infinite, is also infinite in his characteristics and attributes. But in Islam, God's attributes are limited, so he's a little bit loving towards certain people, and he's a little bit just because he punishes some sin. But this certainly isn't what we find in Christianity. So I don't think it's a problem for a being to be infinitely just and infinitely merciful, provided you show how those attributes are both exercised in history. You said, were there any predictions about Muhammad? We talked a bit about this yesterday. There are predictions about Muhammad. According to the Bible, Jesus delivered a message to his followers. This is the gospel. It's a message that Jesus died on the cross for sins, that he rose from the dead, and that he claimed to be divine. This is the core of the gospel, these three things. We're also told in the New Testament that false prophets are going to come, and they're going to try and corrupt and